Hey, I'm Tyler, and welcome to this episode of A Good Problem to Have. I am delighted that I get to have my partner financial planner, certified financial planner, Ronnie Colvin, with me today. And we're going to be talking about some specific cases that we've seen in recent months. Thanks for joining, Ronnie. I'm glad we can talk about this together.
Oh, no problem. Anytime.
Um, Ronnie and I, we work together with our clients, and so we talk about all sorts of things uh, every week. And what we want this to be, and we're going to be doing this on a monthly basis for one of the episodes, is talking about a specific case or a few that have some commonalities, and they produce some interesting decision factors that you may not have thought of and so that's the purpose of why we're doing this together, so that we can talk about some real impact that planning can have with some decisions that a lot of doctors face. Now, this past summer, we saw a few situations where doctors wanted to know if they could afford to install a pool in their backyard. And yeah, it was a hot summer around here. I'm sure well, it's hot by you all the time, isn't it, Ronnie?
Pretty much, yeah.
So anyway, it's not uncommon at all that doctors are like, "Oh man, I'd love a pool," especially those like if you got, especially if you got kids or something and you're trying to create some recreational location. It's convenient. It's like right there at home. It makes it appealing to have people over. And obviously, if it's a hot summer, it's refreshing. Um, but it's not always like straight across the board. Like, oh, you got $100,000 saved up. All right, pay for the pool, or 150 or 200 or whatever it is. There's some other factors, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, once you get past the initial question of do you really want a pool, and you get that answered because there's all kinds of considerations that go into that. But yeah, I mean, because it's never just the pool itself, because is it an in-ground pool? Isn't it an above-ground pool? In either case, you've got concrete work, decks and things, other stuff to build. So it's never just the pool itself. It's all the stuff around the pool because you need to make it safe for young kids. It needs to be attractive. And then some clients want to do it as part of a bigger project to create an outdoor space that's got, you know, fancy grill and all kind of other stuff like that. So it can easily top $200,000.
Hmm. Yeah. And one thing one thing I noted was like you mentioned the ancillary costs. That's for sure. And then there's the maintenance cost too.
Oh golly, yes. I mean, depending on the pool choice, a freshwater pool that you keep clean and maintain with, chlorine, and you gotta either get an automatic pool cleaner device or you've got to go out there and manually clean it, maintain it, that sort of stuff. Maintain the pump, the electricity for the pump, and all kind of things like that. Uh, it's a it's not an inconsiderable task. Now, you might pay a pool service to do that for you if you have the excess cash flow, but other than that, it's on you to make sure once you have the pool and it's installed that you maintain it so that it's attractive and usable and everything else.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, we got a hot tub in our backyard and it was great. We had to build the deck around it because it
Mm.
was not just like one of those that was it was the kind that like got it had to be sat into something.
Ah, okay.
We had like this
It
wood
wasn't a standalone device, yeah.
exactly. And so we had a deck built around it and it wasn't huge. But it was just enough where there was like a bench like that was adjacent to it and it kind of created this frame.
Right.
But even that, like the maintenance, like changing out the chemicals and like opening it up in the springtime and well, actually, wait, no, we didn't open that up. Yeah, we kept that year round, but we had like in the spring and fall we had maintenance times where it's like we had to drain it and like have the pump cleaned out and the pool or the hot tub.
Right.
Um, anyway, it's time or paying somebody to do it.
Yep. It's time
Um,
and money. Yep.
and then I thought the most interesting thing that the reason why I wanted to talk about this today was because of the way to fund it. Because it's one thing if you've just got cash sitting there. It's not very common to have undedicated $150,000 in cash just sitting in a checking account. It's not unheard of, but it's not common. Um, you've got 2 million, say you got 2 million in net worth. Why can't you afford a $150,000 pool? There are
Sure.
reasons. There are
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about in planning and financial planning in general, we talk about asset location as well as asset allocation. But, if you have all that net worth tied up in either, home equity or retirement accounts that you can't touch without penalty until you're 59 and a half, where's that, 150 to $200,000 for the pool going to come from?
Yeah.
Now, if you are doing the, Scrooge McDuck thing and you just got it in piles of cash, sure, great. Then as long as it's excess cash and you want to throw it at that, fine. But if your value is tied up in other assets or in account types that you can't easily tap, then that becomes a very different discussion.
Yeah. You know, one of the reasons that we'll have physicians right out of training or as soon as they can after training start funding a taxable investment account is to provide for midterm goals. Could function as like an early retirement vehicle, but sometimes it can also function as a major purchase like this.
Yeah,
And that that also presents some challenges because you have to sell something if you have invested the funds.
yep.
And when you do that, that creates taxation. So let's say you have a doctor who has built up a substantial taxable account,
Hmm.
but they also have a significant amount of home equity. How do they go about deciding whether to take a HELOC or sell assets?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're talking about the entire family situation, not just the physician. But what's their tax situation look like? I mean, does their spouse also have a high income? And if you're looking at an emergency medicine doctor making 350, 400, up to, 500 a year, and they have a spouse that works in tech that makes another 400 a year, your bracket is pretty high already. And I'm going to turn around and recommend to you that you sell taxable assets to add to that income for the year. Probably not. But that's the problem. I mean, it's not that they don't have the ability to pay for it. It's, would I pile yet more taxes on you? And do you really want to pay those taxes on appreciated assets? I mean, you look at a client that bought Nvidia when it was dirt cheap before the AI boom hit, and all of a sudden, they've got several $100,000 in capital gains in that stock. Am I going to tell them to sell that and realize those gains on top of $700,000 in income and put them up in the 35% bracket? Why on earth would I do that? Why would you pay extra taxes when you don't have to? You could do something like um, borrow against the equity itself, the assets themselves. You can get an equity lending at a reasonable interest rate in today's market. So you can borrow against the value of those without selling them.
So you're
So
talking
you could
about
do that.
a securities backed line of credit.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
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 So you could do that, tap the value that you have without actually selling the asset and incurring the taxable gains.
Hmm.
That's always an option. You could look at the possibility of just a standard, whether it's a home equity line or an equity loan, like that, to finance the pool and deck and everything else all at once. The question then is just, do you have the excess cash flow in your budget to make those new loan payments? That is also true, obviously, of the securities line. is to because you got to pay the money back. I mean, it's not like it's just going to sit there. You got to pay yourself back for it.
Yeah.
So the ability to make those payments hinges on your monthly cash flow. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of, well, we're putting in, you know, 10, 20 grand a month in the taxable account anyway. So just dial that back and redirect some of that to, either paying down, that the loan that you get for the pool with that cash flow. Or we actually had one client, an interesting situation, that they were heavily funding their kids' 529s. And after doing the math, it's with the for the kids, the 529s were already fully funded for all their projected college costs. So they could turn that off and not fund the 529s anymore. They were done, and they could turn around and redirect that cash flow towards paying towards the pool. And it's
Mm.
just something we had to run the numbers and find it. They didn't have, an initial look at their budget, they didn't have the cash flow to pay for it. Um, Out of just regular monthly income, but they did once we found out that they didn't have to fund the 529s anymore. That produced enough excess cash flow to make the loan payments.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good find, because like if you don't like, and this why this goes back to like the fundamental question of what are the priorities.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people that get a pool, they've got kids, and
Oh yeah.
it's why they want to get the pool. But they also often want to be able to support their undergrad tuition. So that can be a tough decision. But if you're in the situation where you have been really responsible with funding it early on, it's a fortunate position to find yourself in, and being able to make that adjustment. I think the other thing that I think is a challenge is that anybody who's gotten themselves in the position of saving really well, it can be really hard to pause.
Oh golly, yeah. But
Like,
we see that in people who have saved all their lives and they get ready to retire,
yeah,
and they're now in this what we would refer to as a decumulation phase or a spending phase, because they've been saving for 40 years and they can't let go. They can't turn that off to continue saving. That they've just gotten that habit's been so ingrained for a 40-year working career that they can't turn it off, and they can't spend the way they've planned to spend. We've run it all and built the plan for them to travel and do things, but suddenly when the paycheck stops, they become fearful about the fact that they feel like they don't have any money but they've got you know several million in the bank because they've saved and invested, and now it's time to tap that. But psychologically it'd be very hard to flip that switch to go back and forth. And in this particular case, with the two clients this summer, yeah, they built their cash flow out for putting saving and investing in the kids' 529s and all the things that they're doing in their life. And when we figured out that they didn't have to do it anymore, they're like, oh wow. I mean, because they had just planned on continuing to do that.
hmm
Um, and had they done that, there would have been close to $1 million in their 529s, and the kids would never have used, never.
hmm
But then they'd have trouble getting it back out. Changes in recent tax law allows for pulling that 529 money out later on, but that's money they could have used in life, and now it is what they're going to use to turn around. And in that particular case, it was okay. Use the equity you already have in the home, get an equity loan, and in order to make the payments on that equity loan, we're going to redirect the 529 contributions that are no longer necessary, and so it pays for itself. But um, we had to find that, because the alternative was selling $200,000 worth of appreciated assets and paying capital gains taxes on top of their income, and that was just a very unpalatable way to do it.
yeah, and it the right solution will it'll vary too. Like
Oh, sure.
in the cases we're talking about, the capital gains tax was more expensive than the cost of borrowing. However, you might like if you're someone that has been uh like if for some reason your contributions to a taxable account, you have had some from years past, but then you have some new contributions. Maybe a person's has some recently purchased assets and the capital gains wouldn't be that high.
Sure.
Now, of course, if they're purchased in less than 12 months, and then the gain would be taxed at an even
Short-term
higher
gains.
rate
Yeah.
at your income
Yep.
rate. But like, let's say it wasn't that huge, maybe the tax hit will not be as substantial as the interest expense that you would pay on a loan. But the point of this is that you need to compare.
Yeah.
And like every scenario is different. So doing the comparison of through analysis will help you to know like what are the pros and cons of each path. So
Yeah. There are various the different level of expense, where the expense comes from, how it's taxed, um, and the return on hassle of finding out. I mean, like what's the example you're talking about there is if we're going to look for assets that really don't have any appreciation that were recently purchased, or assets that individually may have very little delta between cost basis and current value, to minimize those taxes, we got to start digging into batches and when they were bought and all kind of stuff. And that's a lot of work. You may or may not, especially if you're doing this DIY and you're not using a planner or a financial advisor, if you're trying to DIY this, that's a lot of work to go dig into and find that kind of stuff, as opposed to just saying, yeah, look, I mean, I'm gonna get an equity loan that's got a 15-year term, and I know I'm gonna pay this much interest, over that term. I just, how do I want to make that payment is then the question.
yeah, yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I think it's these sort of things come up in various ways, and I thought that it was a really it was really nice to see the result of whether one does it on their own or like working with a planner, being able to see the tangible differences so that you can get out of a bit of decision paralysis. I think if you're someone that has substantial assets and you want to make a major purchase and you are dealing with time, like in the case of parents with little kids or, preteens or something, you're thinking, I want to make the most of these next few years, whatever amount it is. And it's really, it takes some courage and humility to jump off and say, okay, I need to figure this out because the time's just going to keep rolling. So
Yeah.
I was really proud of these families I'm thinking of because they took the step to do it so that they wouldn't, because I think they were feeling stuck.
Yeah. 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 Well, of how to do it, they want to do it, but the how was so overwhelming, because they knew, in the back of their minds, they're like, there's going to be some issues coming up out of this that we may not be seeing. So we need to ask somebody to look at this objectively for us on the outside.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I mean, between any taxable implications that they just didn't think about when they look at your taxable account and go, oh sure, we could do this. We can just sell these things and pay for it. Oh crap, we didn't think about the taxes that we'd have to pay in the year that we did that, or something
Yeah,
like that. Sure, absolutely. Um, and the parents, especially with young kids like that, the last thing you want to be is have that cats in the cradle situation, to where you've worked and you've done all this stuff and you've sort of let their childhood disappear. Yeah, yeah. When you've got that kind of situation, it's very disheartening to think you can't do those things. And it may be that you can't, you just haven't necessarily figured out how.
yeah,
And that's what we want to do to help them do that.
yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, this was neat. Thanks for taking some time to talk this out. It's good to see you.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, and we'll do it again. We'll do it again in a few weeks.
Next month.
Yeah, yeah, next month.
Yeah.
So,
All
okay.
right.
Thanks for joining us today, and a good problem to have. And we'll see you next week.
Yep. See you soon.